thanks so much for coming today. I know there's so many sessions to choose from, so many good ones. I really, really appreciate you coming. My name's Joe. Universal last night? How many? So mine is always, the favorite ride is the Mummy. Did people go on that? That's great. That thing is so cool. Just kind of keep on going on it. People staying around Stone Temple Pilots tonight? Yeah. I haven't seen them since Scott Whalen. I used to go all the time in the 90s, but I'm sure they're going to be good. It should be really, really good. How many MSPs are here? Oh, so almost all. Oh, very cool. Very cool. And at the MSP, are you owners? Are you management? Yeah. I bleed for you. Yeah. So podcast. Who listens, watches podcasts? I mean, I think we really saw. Okay, so any of our MSP influencers here? I don't think so. Maggie? If you see any of these people that have a gold medallion, or we pick them every year, it's a great thing. You can apply for it if you want. If you're an MSP, we have our MSP 555 list. If there's any of you here and I didn't get you, you should have got your gift as well. I pick a group, a council, and they go through all the applications. We'll be releasing the new applications in Q1, which, by the way, is 6 weeks away. It'll be 2025 in 6 weeks. Crazy. Okay, so the agenda. So I'm going to tell you my story, and then there's 5 ways that me and my team feel that we can help MSPs drive sales and marketing with podcasting. Okay, please indulge me. My story. So I'm from, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm from the Northeast. But I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. I started my MSP in 1993 after I graduated college in my father's garage. Wasn't called an MSP back then, of course. We were tech support and application development. Fun time, cold calling, not having any clients. I don't know how many of you have been there, but it's tough work. So we've made a bunch of acquisitions, and 1999 was Y2K. So I don't know how many of you remember Y2K? Yeah. Hey, your computers aren't going to work after New Year's. It was quite a time. But we made many acquisitions before then. So in 2007, I haven't missed an ITNation since 2007. There was 200 of us in Tampa, and now there's 7,000 of us in Orlando. And ConnectWise told us to get Kaseya for our RMM. Now they're not the best of friends, but can you imagine such a time? Because at the time, ConnectWise did not have an RMM, so they told us to get Kaseya. So, we had made lots of acquisitions. We were doing really well. Management asked for better business intelligence with all these new platforms. So we made some internal dashboards. Any Evolve members here? Yeah. That was a game changer for me when I was in the podcast. To go to a peer group and to be able to talk to people, in my same position, because you feel like you're on an island, many of you, the MSP owners, and that changed. That was HTG back then. I've been with HTG and Evolve for about 20 years. I was a facilitator for a while. So with the internal tools we made for dashboarding, we inadvertently showed our fellow MSPs in the room. And so they said, why don't you productize this? We need, dashboarding for ConnectWise. So has anybody heard of CW Dash? There's our marketing. But anyway, so CW Dash was good. We released that in 2010. It was doing very well. We were selling lots of seats along with the MSP. And then what happened is a bunch of our vendors said, hey, let us put ads in it. We were at an HTG meeting, and they came to us and said, we see the popularity of your application. Let us put ads in it. So we went back and considered it, and it got to the point where I was making more money giving it away than I was selling it. There was so many ads in it, and so I stopped it. And it was quite an interesting conversation with my team saying, stop billing these MSPs. Very interesting. But with all the money we're getting from the sponsors, it worked out. So we turned it into freeware, and it's still around. I had an MSP this week talk to me, said they used it a while ago. It's still out there. So then the vendors started asking for more things. Oh, now you're doing advertising. Can you get the MSPs to raise their hands? And can you get them to talk to us? And can you make an advisory board for us? So we started doing all these things for vendors that we were using internally, and we ended up creating a lot of services only because they were asking us. And remember, when we made the dashboard, I wasn't going to bring it to market until my fellow peer group told me to do so. So I have really no good ideas. I just hear them and I try to turn them around. So in 2019, I got an offer that I couldn't refuse. I thought they were kidding, and they weren't, and I ignored them, and then they doubled it and logically bought my MSP in 2019. Logically is here. They're a great organization. I was their very first acquisition. Went all the way up there to Portland, Maine. Wonderful organization. They're over $100 million MSP now. They're in Columbus, Ohio. They had me go there a couple weeks ago to help with the podcast. So in 2021, I was still doing all the vendor stuff. My friend said, hey, Joe, you ask a lot of questions. Why don't you start a podcast? Listen to fellow podcasters. I started in 2021, Joey Pinz. So Pinz is my golf nickname. I didn't want to use my real name. Joe Pannone is a little hard. By the way, Pannone is my father's from Italy. It means large loaf of bread. So perhaps my relatives were grainers. I'm not sure. But P-I-N-Z is my golf nickname, so that's what I used. And so here we are. A year ago from today, we launched MSP Influencer. We have over 75,000 MSPs. Go to mspinfluencer.com, subscribe to it. We put up blogs. We put up some of the podcasts there. It's really cool. And here we are in 2024 with lots of offerings for vendors and for MSPs to help with growth. So there's my story, the story of Forza. Forza, by the way, is another Italian word meaning force or strength. So that's my story. That's where I came from. So when I asked who was an MSP here, I bleed for you. I understand you, and it's not easy at all. Okay, so let's get right to it. So we came up with 5 ways where we think marketing and sales can help MSPs with podcasting. So the big thing is storytelling. So when you go, away from here, what you'll probably remember, hopefully some of the main points you'll remember. Hopefully you'll remember parts of my story. But people remember stories, right? They remember how you made them feel. So this is a great vehicle. Podcasting is a great vehicle for that. Okay, so in 1993, I started my MSP. I was working way too hard, ladies and gentlemen. I was working 14, 15-hour days. That is me. On the left, I was not paying attention to my diet. I was working way too hard. I'm in front of the doctor, and she tells me I'm 340 pounds. 46-inch waist. I'm now 32. I'm now 195, 200 pounds. So I was pissed off, and I'm driving home. She says to me, there's the quote, if you do not lose the weight, you'll not see your daughter graduate. This is what she told me. So I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. It's my pie hole. This is what I did. I'm going to change this. Spent the next 6-7 months, changed everything I did, lost 130 pounds. You can't look at it as a finishing line, right? You got to keep with these changes. And I stayed off. So people ask me, what's your secret? Like there's a big secret, and there's no secret. I say discipline. That's how I lost it. I got focus, I got routine, etc. That's how I keep it on. So on the podcast, I lost a bunch of weight. I talk to people in these areas. It's just not business and tech. It's also science, health, fitness, and some other areas. Can't talk about tech all the time. It would drive me crazy. In those areas, and then at the end of the conversation, I relay my story about losing weight, and I ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. So over 500 episodes we've had so far over 3 years, and the common string between all the episodes is discipline. Don't claim to be the king of discipline. I had way too much for lunch. There's lots of stuff out here, but there's some areas you focus on that I focus on that I try to. We're very fortunate. YouTube actually sends something in the mail. They have people that send things in the mail. We got this wonderful little plaque. We're over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is really cool. And between you and us, YouTube pays for my golf. How's that? So it's a nice little side hobby, and it's really nice. I really enjoy the podcast. Hope I didn't upset you. Look for us on all social media. The Joey Pinz, again, Z with a Z, like pizza. I'm from New Haven, and I'll challenge anyone with better pizza than New Haven. I'll challenge any city. Anyway, I got a book deal out of it. So because of this, because of the podcast, a publisher came to me, then another publisher came to me, and I could talk to you offline. I got a third publisher involved, and I had them bid against each other. It was great for about a month. But anyway, leadership books came to me. I actually wrote 60,000 words. couldn't believe it. It came down to 45,000. It'll be released in the spring. Take a look. So the vision and the mission, and I try to hold true to it, how discipline can better ourselves in society and just continuing to grow and learn from others. As I get older, I'm a 56-year-old man. I have more questions than I have answers. I don't know if many of you feel that way, but I constantly ask questions. I asked many of you questions before we even started. It's the best way I can learn, the Socratic method. So what I see in 4 mistakes in common podcasters right now. And look, this is the way I do it. I do an interview style. I don't like to say interview. I do conversation style, just one-on-one. I am not good at monologue. I do a complete dialogue. So this is, I don't want to offend anyone if some of the mistakes are in here. This is just the way I do it and what I see. Just try to be genuine, conversations, not interviews, have good audio, video equipment. So Quentin Tarantino has a great philosophy where he says that he makes movies for himself and anybody can come and watch it. He doesn't really think of the audience. And that's the way I do it. I never when I'm talking to somebody, I never think, hey, what would this person ask them? It's not that I don't care about the listener or the watcher, but I'm just making this a genuine conversation for myself. And it's the same thing, of course, with Rick Rubin, the great producer. He never thinks, Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think everybody knows Rick Rubin, but he never thinks of the listener. I wonder what the market will like. He never does. He just, what do I like? And I hope that others will like it as well. So that's the same philosophy I adopt with the podcast, with every episode, with every conversation. And it's not about you, right? The conversation, listen, I lean in, try to be genuine. You ever talk to somebody and as you're talking, there's that drive you crazy? You know they're not listening, right? They're just kind of waiting to speak. There's a big difference between listening and waiting to speak. Just try to be genuine. Stop saying okay. And this whole kind of can thing. This is my final question to you. You wouldn't say that in a conversation. Just try to make it genuine, and it will be. People remember stories, have a point. So I've done over 500 episodes. Guests come to me now, and I decide whether we want to talk to them. And I end up doing some research. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and today on the Zippity Doodah Show, it's a great day, and I have this special guest. Come on, people, we don't talk like that. Just get into it. Just ask your question and have a conversation. That's not my style. Nobody cares about your show. There's 4 million podcasts right now. It's out there. There's so many. You can get whatever you want. True crime is number one with women. With men, it's comedy. But there's so many podcasts. The good thing about podcasts, it's very low barrier to entry. A couple $100 worth of equipment, right? You go to Amazon, get some equipment. The software that it takes to distribute it out to the platforms, just $20 a month. It's very inexpensive, low barrier to entry. The bad thing about podcasts is that it's low barrier to entry. Things are inexpensive and you can get there. So there's everything for everyone out there. It's not about you. The audiovisual stuff, I've done video for every episode. I think it's the future of podcasting. The only 2 platforms supporting it now are Spotify and YouTube. Apple should soon because they're the biggest audio. But I've video recorded everything, and the equipment, I use a piece of software. If anybody has any of that question, I'll be happy to share the hardware we use. I don't know if any of you saw our table out there with the podcast. I go a little overboard. I'm a former MSP. I have like 3 layers in case something goes wrong, but that's just because of my kind of technical background. I won't go over all this, but the statistics are astounding, right? So the 90% of podcasts, by the way, last in less than 10 episodes. 41% of the U.S. population listens. There's just so many. The engagement level, 80% of podcasters listen to most each episode. Do people listen to Joe Rogan here? There's 3-hour conversations. The statistics on that, people are listening to the whole thing. They're not checking out. They're not getting bites anymore. Lex Friedman goes very long. Andrew Huberman goes very long. I generally do about an hour, hour and a half, sometimes a little less. But with a long-term conversation, you really get to know somebody. You know, when I was at the MSP, I would take a sales prospect or one of our new people out to play 18 holes. You know, you get to know somebody after 3 or 4 hours. And podcast is another vehicle for that, I feel. Stop me with any questions, by the way. Sometimes I feel like I'm rambling. Okay, what we see now. So bridging the gap between marketing and sales. When I had my MSP in the 90s, I hired a salesperson and I handed him the yellow pages. I'm sorry. Yellow pages, do we know what the yellow pages? Okay. Yeah, it's like Instagram, but on paper, I guess, yeah. But bad thing to do. Marketing and sales. So you need marketing in the front to support the salesperson. Depending on the size of your organization, it could be a person. As you get bigger, it needs to be most. You need to have effective marketing campaigns to handle sales. I know it's a simplification, but when I work with vendors and I work with MSPs, I don't see that. I see a salesperson oftentimes and, hey, we try to get them leads. You have to have effective marketing and campaigns. I'll show a little bit more about podcasts, how that can help. You know, if you want to talk, we do some fractional work here. Have a real sales engine that comforts, that creates that marketing and sales engine. Have some decent tools. I have found the tools don't matter. We could have arguments about that, and I'm sure our host would disagree. But get good tools to do that. You know, automation, iterate, and repeat your campaigns. So this is just a sample here. I'll put this slide up. The deck will be available to everybody of how a sales and marketing engine may be in your organization. We start with sales leadership. It sits at the top. It's all direction. We get the marketing team that has data, the team, the technical support, and then the sales managers. All feed in that direction. And then the managers are there. We're actually talking to sales SDRs, whatever the representatives are. They're making calls, they're sending emails, they're following up. And then you have the account managers after they're on and success. Does anybody have this particular system at all? Does this surprise you? Does this help at all? We end up adopting this onto some of our MSPs and vendors that need it. Just one quick slide about customer success. Customer success, it's got 3 goals, people. And it could be a half person, it could be a quarter person, it could be whatever you want. The only 3 goals are retention, right? Referrals, and testimonials. You dedicate someone or part of someone to customer success with these 3 goals, it'll pay off incredibly. Do not undervalue customer success. Okay, so podcast as an actual asset to generating leads. Once you get that podcast done, so I get an hour and a half podcast done, transcript is created. My goodness, you put that bad boy in ChatGPT or wherever you want and start creating drafts of blogs. My book, by the way, I got 25 guests and I gave them different names. And then I put them in the AI engine, and then I started asking questions how particular. My thesis is that discipline is a spectrum of 10 elements. So I went through each element, and I asked the guests, and I gave actual stories about how I related to that. But it's just a content machine, people. You can get video, you can get audio, you can get lots of blogs and content from that. Social media. I don't know if anybody follows me on LinkedIn or the Joey Pinz. I mean, we do multiple posts daily. We have tools that do that. We're way ahead of it. But there's so much content available. We've got over 500 episodes, at least an hour long each. It's a lot of content available. Making great content from that. You know, if you wanted to create something, we call it, does everybody know the term listicle instead of an article? Okay, so it's fairly new to me too. So instead of an article, it's a list of things. So, you know, top X secrets lawyers should know about something. You know, use this type of format to get them, to create a great asset, to create a great marketing piece. Any of those kinds of great titles. Make sure it credentializes you. Get them a quick win. Make sure it's got great design. Anything resembling a pitch equals death. When you make your marketing collateral, you're in it to help them. Give them everything you can, and then they'll come back. Listicles is a great way to do that. You could put video into a listicle too from one of the podcasts, one of your great discussions that you've had that's germane to the particular topic. Guest appearances. Be on other people's podcasts. Have them swap with you. You've got great stories as MSPs. Man, with employees, with clients. Back in the 90s, we were still trying to convince people to get computers. Can you imagine? Bill Gates said a computer in every home. Like, are you kidding me? That'd be great. I mean, I remember we got a call once in the 90s and they said the foot pedal doesn't work. So they were getting the mouse and they were putting it on the ground and thought it was this is what it was like in the 90s. The CD-ROM would come out and they'd put their coffee in. It was just so different back then. And these are the stories that people will remember when you're on your own podcast, when you're talking to others. Share it. Share it to prospects. They'll see how genuine you are. Oh, wow, tell me more about that. Did coffee spill over? Did you have to replace? It's so honest. Cross-promote, brand awareness. You can leverage credibility as well with these appearances. AI helps with that now too. But yeah, there's so many. I know somebody has some of the most unique hobbies, axe throwing. There's thousands of podcasts on axe throwing. It's absolutely incredible. But you can leverage your credibility, and when you're on other people's podcasts, you can share followers. I mentioned before, YouTube, we have over 125,000. Instagram, I think we're at about 175,000 now. TikTok, we're almost at 200,000. So, when I'm on somebody else's, they could see it. When they're on mine, they could see it as well. So, follow-ups. This is the last point here. I know everybody says follow-up, but will you notice next week when you fly back, how many of the vendors will follow up Monday and Tuesday? Not many, right? It'll be like Thanksgiving, and it'll be like December. Like, hey, remember me back 5 weeks ago? I mean, even they're paying $50,000 for the small booth over there. $50,000 for the smallest booth. Plus, they have to get people. Follow-up is just so critical, and you can automate it. There's so many good platforms out there that can automate the follow-up. Once you get somebody to raise their hand at an event or at one of the listicles that you create, or follow up on social media, you have to watch them and make sure there's no cracks. Try not to miss them. I know I always feel better when somebody, even if I'm not interested, I say, well, at least they followed up right away. I know I'm on the other side, and I may have a different view. You may get annoyed at that. But I enjoy, at least they've automated, and there's a sense of value there. I've talked to some of these vendors over there. Some of them have 45, 50 appointments set up already. It's absolutely incredible. And then I talked to some, well, we didn't set up appointments. We just kind of got their information. So, well, then what's the real kind of call to action? How are you going to really follow up with them? But follow up. I made a priority cycle here. I don't know if this will help anybody. It helps some of our clients. Getting your collateral, which are the testimonials, the video from the podcast, the listicles, everything must have a call to action that follows up with them. Create the journey for each one, generate the leads, improve, and follow up. So this is just the marketing content cycle here that we've created. That's just really important. And there's so many tools now. So what I just said, this is what we promote after we get a prospect to raise their hand. We're interested. We got your listicle. We saw you at a show. We say 7 days and 7 touches. The magic number is 6 to 8. 7 touches on average gets an appointment or gets reaction. 7 people. 7 gets it. So what we say is, day 1, the blue is the actual sales and the SDR. We want them calling them right away. Day 2, 3, 5, and 6, we want some automated emails going through, right? And try to get that appointment. Offer a Starbucks card. I'll buy you a virtual cup of coffee if you spend 15 minutes with me. I'll give you an Amazon gift card if you can. Hey, there's these great speakers that we just got at the show. We have extra. I'll send one off to you if you take a meeting with us. I promise I won't pitch. It won't be boring, and it'll be a good time. At the very least, you plant the seed. I got an email last week of somebody I've been talking to for 2.5 years. Have you had sales cycle go that long? Right? I mean, it happens. Some turn around quickly, but some, you have to be there when they're available. And they said, we finally need you. We need you now. It's a great MSP in St. Louis that's growing incredibly, and there's been some fractional leadership to keep them accountable. But sometimes it just lasts that long. So you're more than welcome to use this. Again, it's just something we don't recommend, but it's something we suggest. But just, if it's not this process, make your own. 7 touches. That's it. 7 touches after they're interested, after they raise their hand. Not cold, after they raise their hand. And then after this, if nothing happens, put them in the drip, where you're emailing them something every month, where they're on your social media link, you're still touching them, because they'll think, oh, wait, oh, that's right, I may need them again. Do not forget about them. Don't let them go away. We spend so much time, my team back there will say, we get these prospects to raise their hand. I talk to them, okay, we got you 50, how's it been? Well, I called them and then they never called me back. Did you send any other emails? Did you follow up? Did you, just, I'm pleading with you, please follow up with your prospects. Oh, that's it. I went on for way too long. I do not like speaking alone like this for so long. Any questions? Does this help? Yes, Abe, my good friend, the channel leader, Abe Garver, cellist.
I think I said it on LinkedIn, I think it's incredible how you can get people to talk. And I'll give the example. My son was in Denver with me, and we ran into you, and I learned something about my son after living with him for 15 years that I had no idea. He got it out of him in like maybe 15 seconds. And I just wonder how your mind, like, it's an incredible gift that you have. Like, I wonder, how does your mind, when you meet somebody, what's going on? Like, what are you curious about that starts the interaction?
Well, one thing I'm working on is taking compliments. That's for sure. And it makes me very uncomfortable. But I'm just generally interested. As I get older, I have more questions than answers. This gentleman said he had a podcast I couldn't wait to hear about. I want to hear more about. I'm just generally interested. I don't know how else to kind of, I have a great.
That you have when you approach, like, for those of us that aren't as good at it, like, is there one thing that we could ask about the other person that you'd recommend?
Here's a great question to ask somebody. It might put them back on their heels a little bit. Is there something in the last month or 6 weeks that you've changed your mind on? I feel the heaviness of your thoughts right now. So that usually is a good question, because generally, especially in our political season, people kind of dig in a bit. It's nice to know that we're open-minded. I reserve the right to change my mind on any given subject, given new evidence. I think most of us are that way. But that's a generally good question. I'll tell you a very quick story. My father is from Caserta, Italy. He came here when he was 18. He had $20 on him. He got his first pair of shoes when he was 12. He was a poor farmer. So I'm 10 years old. It's the first day of summer. This is 3rd grade. He says, Joe, put your clothes in this suitcase. I said, sure, Dad. I put some clothes in there. He proceeds to bring me to the bus station in New Haven, tells the bus driver to drop me off at Terminal 1 JFK, gives me a plane ticket and a picture of my grandmother. You're going to meet your grandmother in Milan. Where's that, Dad? Well, it's in Italy. Go and ask people there's adults. So I'm 10 years old. I'm excited as hell. I get on the bus. Didn't even want to bring me to the airport. He had stuff to do. So I get to the airport. I ask people. I get on the plane. I fly to Milan. I pull out my picture. I meet my grandmother for the first time and my uncle. And I proceed to spend every summer in Italy till college. Not every summer, many summers. So when I'm there, nobody knows English. I meet all my cousins. I have so many questions. Just the culture. Perhaps that's part of the reason why I'm so inquisitive. I share that story now because my father would probably be arrested. Can't send a 10-year-old on the plane by themselves. But back then, people were smoking on it. It was 1978, right? There was no TSA, and it was different times. Thank you for the compliments, Abe. I just have generally good questions. So, I ask people about discipline. I sometimes ask them what motivates them, but I just generally I find out some of their hobbies. I talked to somebody, Rod Matthews, the CEO of Vaccine, the company that ConnectWise just bought. I had a conversation with him yesterday. He went to Juilliard, a tuba player. I'm racing with questions. Well, how did you get into tuba? Physically, you got to get into that thing, right? And I've asked so many questions. What's Juilliard like? It's the best of the best. Did you go to Juilliard? Oh, you're a cellist. Anyway, so I don't know if that answers your question. I'm just interested. I'm just really interested. I don't really like talking this long. I'd rather listen. Even in sales. Maybe that's what, as an MSP, you're immature with sales, but as you get a little bit more mature in the business, and you start going to sales meetings, you just can't get a listening. I'm a little bit of an extrovert, I don't know if you can tell, but you still need to be able to listen. Any other questions? Yes.
Automating your follow-up.
Yes.
A preferred tool.
So what we use internally to automate after the hand raise is we use constant contact. MailChimp will work. Maggie was a couple of other ones, right? Yeah, there's a couple other ones, but I know in no way endorse it. There's 5 good, 6 good products, but constant contact works for us. That's after they raise their hand. Before they raise their hand, we use a bunch of other tools to do some blasting and calling and things like that. Yes.
If you've never done it before, how many podcasts do you prepare for ahead of time?
Yeah. Great question. So when I was in, I generally do 1 a day, 3 times a week, 4 times. I try not to do more than that. So when I was in high school, I would stay up late with my Atari computer. I taught myself BASIC, dating myself. This was in the 80s, and I knew this was going to be my future because I looked outside and it was morning already. The hours went by. So I would listen to Johnny Carson. I say listen, Johnny Carson and David Letterman every night. And people in my high school said, who's David Letterman? It's 12:30. I would keep it on, so I would listen. And by the way, when it came to commercial, I just kind of get up and go to the bathroom and then come back. So I just got this unique habit of being able to listen while I work. So while I'm preparing for an interview, I listen to previous podcasts that are on and audio or video while I'm working. And so then I write myself a note to ask that question. I think I hear some stories from them on previous podcasts. So that's how I do all my work. As far as we get a lot of requests now for guests. And there's a lot of the kind of, make your audience $20,000 a month, these kind of things that I just move them away. But as long as they've got a great story and they're kind of in the area that I'm interested in, we bring them on. We're booked out now until like January, I think. We only sit about 90 minutes. Did I answer your question? So I usually spend the morning with them, listening to them on other podcasts. Of course, the whole bio comes over. I go to all their social medias. I see LinkedIn. But once I find out where they're from, that's a really great position to start too. I spoke to an MSP from Iceland here. Came by the booth from Reykjavik. What's the economy like? He told me it was 9% interest rates and inflation. I said, are you doing well? He says, yeah, we're doing great, even with that bad economy. Anyway, my point is I have questions. So did I answer? So I usually spend a good 4 or 5 hours with them, but not dedicated. I listen to them while I'm doing other work. Any other questions? Yes.
Question, to retain current customer, maybe getting new referrals. We try to tend towards webinars. We also try to upsell, inform our current customers. How do you compare this to? Is it passe or how do you compare it to podcasts? How do you? Well, it's very close. But I feel a webinar is more like one person to many
Right. Also, there's not a
less interaction. Yeah. And we record them.
Yes.
And we send them out.
Very good. And you chop them up and get slices out of them, and
Yes,
you
yes,
do that and
yes.
put some B-roll into it. I went down the hall there and I had the 360 camera. I put all that into B-roll.
We don't
Great
go
deal.
to that extent. We don't go to that extent, but we touch base.
It's an expensive weekend video.
Yeah,
But
but
if you turn it into a podcast and you have a conversation with somebody, even a prospect,
I think it's
it's much more
better.
compelling.
I know.
I do. I'm a good
It's more
buyer.
work though.
It's more work. You got to get somebody there. You don't have to be face to face, by the way. You can be person. There's great software. You do it in Zoom. I use a piece of software called Zencaster for all my remote interviews. You know, I'm a Florida resident now. I'm from New Haven, but I came down here once I went, an empty nest. My kids went off, and there's voting time. So I got all the voting, and I did mail in, and I saw the candidates, and I said, "Boy, I don't know. I'm going to contact them all, see if they want to be on the podcast." So I sent like 20 invites out. I got like 14 back. 2 of the judges are in. One of the senators is in because I'll get to know them better, and maybe somebody watching will get to know them better. I stay away from politics, of course. I didn't really talk about politics. I asked more about them. So to answer your
So
question,
you don't like
I'm not an
webinar or
I prefer a podcast over a webinar. Ever since COVID, it's tough. It's tough to get people in. I think so. Bit biased. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions? What time is it? It's 2:07. Oh,
I have a couple of technical questions.
technical.
You mentioned 80.
Yes.
How do you manage the audio from your guests? Because a lot of guests don't like to use, they don't have professional microphones, so they typically come on, they've got like their computer monitor microphone. And how do you manage that? And then as far as video goes, are you videoing, like you mentioned Zoom too, but are you also running an additional camera while you do that?
Okay, great questions about audio video. First, audio. I just got a $90 microphone. It just goes right on an arm. More and more people are getting better audio. Now, the Zencaster software I use, the first couple of minutes is an AV check. Speak a little bit. How's the audio? You got to come a little closer. It's supposed to be a fist from the mic, get a little closer. If they're using like an earpiece, so do you have anything else? The earpiece sometimes works just fine because the equipment is better, but I do the audio check before. Sometimes it's not the best quality, but you got to work with what they have.
Are you doing most of yours in person or are you doing?
No, most are virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, most are virtual because there's people everywhere. Yeah. Video, we're using the same Zencaster software. I don't use my built-in camera. I have an additional one. What is it? It's one of the big ones. I don't remember. Maybe $100 one. And generally, the video that they have on their side is okay. Later, my video I've never edited anything. I have somebody overseas who does it very inexpensively. I can't stand the sound of my voice. I do something when I talk, and I do it now. I do some kind of squinting thing. It gives me chills. I think I've watched maybe a half episode out of 500. But the video, I usually put my notes over my face so I just see them. But as long as it's good video, and Zencaster does a good job of capturing them, the equipment isn't expensive anymore, and I keep pushing Zencaster. I don't get any money from them, but that's what we use. It's better than Zoom.
Okay. And then transcription services with you?
It's all built into Zencaster. Yeah, but there's so many. You can get the end file and put it in many of the transcriptors and move them over. And now I use Read AI for all my Teams meetings, and that will actually give you a summary, count, things like that. I'll be happy to share my exact.
You mentioned Socratic method.
Yes.
Do you do anything? Have you done any official training on Socratic method or watch any podcasters that do Socratic method?
I have. Are you a follower of the Socrates, the great Greek philosopher and Bradford University?
Yeah. Part
Yeah.
of a nonprofit that
Ah,
has their own training.
I've not done anything formal. No. Question-based learning. Yeah. I find that's the best because I kind of get to exactly where I want to go right away. Yeah. I just like questions. Some people I had this one friend of mine who found it interrogative. It was called, "What are you interrogating me?" Okay, sorry. Just curious. Only once. That person's no longer in my life.
For someone that doesn't have a podcast yet, they decide to do it. What are your top 5 recommendations for them to do?
find a subject and just start. I had an idea. I dropped the first episode September 1, 3 years ago, and I actually recorded about 20 or 30 beforehand, and then I just dropped this. The equipment's inexpensive. To me, I'm much better at asking questions, and I know it doesn't seem that way now because it's been a lot of me talking, but ask somebody a question, just take it from there. Just be genuine. You can tell on some of these podcasts when somebody's not listening or they keep interrupting. The interrupting drives me crazy. The guest is talking and the person keeps on trying to, oh, God, just listen. If you're having a conversation, just listen. That's my best advice. And there's 4 million out there. What's the worst could happen? Stop. It's there forever. You know? I thank you so much for your time. Any other questions? I hope this helps. I put this stuff together months ago, and ConnectWise said, "Yeah, we want you to talk." And it's the first time I've done it, and long time listener, first time caller, and I really thank everyone for coming today. Maggie's got gifts for everybody right there on my team. We've got Joey Pinz pens. A new car. Go to joeypins.com with a Z and get our mailer and mention if you want to be a guest, mention that you were here, and we do our best to get you out. I love talking to MSPs. I want to hear your story. I just mentioned a couple today, but I bet you've got great ones. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy Stone Temple Pilots. Thank you, everyone. Yes.